The only reason we know about this story out of West Point, them teaching critical race theory, is thanks to the phenomenal organization Judicial Watch, one of the best organizations on the planet, run by Tom Fitton, who's a great American patriot. And it's just amazing when we go through the details of that. And he joins us right now. Tom, welcome back to the Charlie Kirk Show.
Hey, Charlie. Good to be with you. Appreciate the kind words.
I mean it. You guys really get into the weeds and you reveal what's happening at a deeper level than almost anybody else. So tell us about this story. U.S. Army teaching critical race theory to West Point cadets. How'd you get this information, and what do you believe is the significance of it?
Well, we had to sue for it, as usual. The government doesn't like giving us information, so we asked for records about CRT training, I think not only once, but twice. So we had two federal lawsuits because they refused to respond to our request in a timely way or at all about what they were doing with CRT up there. And they finally turned over at least some documents, which, are outrageous, but, given the fanaticism that the Biden administration has about critical race theory and incorporating it into its whole governance program, it's frankly no surprise. But it's deadly serious in the sense that we have our rising officer corps in West Point. The U.S. military academy there was founded set up by George Washington. It's it's part of our nation's history, and certainly it's the core. It's core to our military history as well. And our cadets, our rising officers, are being force-fed this CRT material that talks about, and I'm sure you've talked about this on the show, white privilege, Black victimization, white oppression. There's language in there talking about slavery in modern America, suggesting that Blacks are facing something like slavery today. And it's anti-Americanism, it's Marxism, it's repackaged Marxism, and they're not being trained in it as a warning that this is what we combat as a military, this type of thinking abroad. No, it's this internal undermining of our military culture and our constitutional system in the heart of the Army, the West Point.
I mean, I want to just read some of this from your wonderful exposure here. Do you think affirmative action creates an environment for reverse discrimination? Use CRT to support your answer. In another slide, it says that racism is ordinary and white Americans have primarily benefited from civil rights legislation. It says that white people are more likely to have a college education, receive recommendations for medical screenings, receive bank approval for a mortgage, or get promoted at a job. It also states that black people are more likely than white people to live in poverty, be homicide victims, or be incarcerated. So what's amazing about this, Tom, and you've done a lot of lawsuits around this critical race theory issue, is that sometimes they'll hide the idea of critical race theory. According to your revelations at Judicial Watch, it literally says CRT, does it not?
Oh, yes. The cadets are expected to explain themselves using the language of CRT in a debate about affirmative action. And to read it is to kind of highlight the absurdity of it. I mean, it's absurd to us, but that's the way these Marxists talk about these issues. It's intellectually, obviously weak. It's historically ignorant. But of course, at its core, it's about a revolutionary approach to undermining everything America is about. And when they talk about white privilege and Black victimization, telling the whites in the class that they're oppressors, telling the Blacks in the class that they're victims and the equivalent of slaves, how does that work in terms of setting up a cohesive army, a cohesive military, esprit de corps? What is happening there? Who's running our military? And I asked that rhetorically. But, I was noting on Fox today, Charlie, you remember Biden came in and did that purge of the boards of visitors of this military academies.
That's right.
The service academies. He knocked out General Keane, for instance, from the West Point Board of Visitors. Now, the Board of Visitors doesn't necessarily run West Point, but it provides a level of expertise and advisory capacity to look at this type of activity. And of course, that whole advisory board has been largely shut down for the last almost 6-8 months. So this is what's happening. And Biden's responsible. The Secretary of Defense is responsible. And the military leadership, and when we're talking about West Point, everyone who's anyone in the Army knows what's going on. So the entire officer class is responsible for this. If they're allowing it to happen, shame on them.
It sure seems that way. I want to shift gears for a second here, Tom. For the last 2 years, you've been coming on our program. We've been talking about John Durham and the entire Russia investigation. And Judicial Watch was instrumental throughout the years of uncovering FISA abuse and what the FBI was doing. What's your current read on the entire investigation? It went really hot with Sussman, and now it's gone completely quiet. What's your take? Where do you think we are?
It was a Justice Department Republican investigation. So in many ways, it seems to me you had the worst of both worlds. Caution and institutionalism. Mm-hmm. So what did they do? They went after, appropriately, this Clinton gang lawyer who lied to the FBI. There's really no doubt he did. But what they avoided doing was they avoided indicting the co-conspirators. And I use the word indict and co-conspirator in the loose sense of the words. And so Hillary Clinton obviously was involved in all of these lies. She's nowhere to be seen. The FBI, it became clear even in the course of the trial. It was incredible to me, Charlie. I don't know if you noticed this, but the FBI was in on it. How is it you can persuade a jury here in D.C. that one of the top lawyers for the Democratic Party goes into the lawyer for the FBI, talk about something having to do with obviously the campaign, even though it was all a big lie, and the FBI pretends, we had no idea this person was coming from Hillary. Of course they knew. And indeed, the information from the trial suggested that the leadership of the FBI didn't want the line agents investigating it talking to the sources of this material. Oh boy. So, it was a terrible loss, in my view, for the rule of law here, but it highlighted that Hillary did it, and the FBI's compromised, and that Durham evidently doesn't want to do the hard work and the heavy lifting, as I call it, of taking on the bad guys in the federal government, namely those who are running the FBI and the Justice Department's unprecedented and a corrupt operation to try to destroy a president. Sedition with a capital S, Charlie.
If we did that to a Democrat, we know exactly what would happen. They deployed Mueller for far less, not even anything less. It was rumors. It was a fake Mueller thing to go investigate and indict anyone in Trump's orbit. So, Tom, I want to ask you, if my memory serves me correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Judicial Watch was suing for some of the footage on January 6th. Is that right? If so, what is the status of that? Because based on what I have heard, there's still 14,000 hours of missing footage.
Yeah, that's the word that the government gave to the courts in their January 6th prosecutions. And so what we asked for was all of the footage and the emails of the security apparatus in the House and the Senate that oversaw the Capitol Hill Police. There's a special board appointed at that time by McConnell and Nancy Pelosi. So this is a bipartisan focused inquiry, right? And so they came back and told us, you can't have any of the videos. You can't have any of the emails. We have sovereign immunity from being asked questions about documents. And even if you could sue us, these documents aren't public records because in part, the public isn't really interested in getting this. There's no public interest in getting it. So you have Pelosi's Congress trying to jail individuals for citing privilege and refusing to cooperate with her, while they're citing privilege and refusing to turn over 1 second of any video about January 6th. So what are they hiding? And I suspect we know what they're hiding. If it was helpful to them, it'd be released, the emails and the video, and it's not helpful, and they're hiding it. And it's been fully briefed. And we're just waiting for the court to move.
Incredible. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. Judicialwatch.org. That is judicialwatch.org. Great as always. Thank
You're
you.
welcome, Charlie. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
covering this.
Of course. Absolutely. Thank you.